Okay, we're up to the define video. So this video will introduce some of the tools and techniques which allow you to generate lots and lots of different ideas really quickly. We like to call this type of sketching seeing. So you're kind of really visualizing the breadth of the problem and all of the possible kind of solutions.
The define phase is all about taking the information that you gathered during the discover phase and turning it into possible solutions or possible ideas through sketching.
The real key to this is to have flexibility and fluency in your idea generation. So it's important to kind of get as many ideas down on the page and as quickly as possible. This stage is really important to get over fixation on the one idea and also to make sure that you move on from just your first idea. And then if you stick with your first idea, then you know that that is the best idea because you've looked at the whole other territory of possible ideas.
And more often than not, the first idea is not the best solution.
Yeah,
so it's important to get over that through this thumbnailing, discover kind of stage of the design process.
Yeah, so really it is about defining what it is you're actually going to design. So all the energy you put into that design process is focused in the right place.
Yeah.
Okay, so importantly, the rapid nature is to kind of defer your judgment on each idea. This means you become very creative in your expansion of the problem. So instead of drawing the same idea over and over, you're trying to get a little bit of diversity, a number of baby steps, if you like, from one idea to the next. It's not trying to be one idea here and one idea there. We're trying to have little steps in between and variations.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be radically different ideas every time. It's absolutely fine to explore one idea and then something that's maybe quite similar. It doesn't have to be entirely new.
These are really interesting on this example because they're tiny variations on the same sort of idea. Looking at handles, looking at how things join together.
Absolutely. I mean, this part in particular is such a nice illustration of lots of different ideas around the same topic.
What's really interesting in these ideas is that they're really simple sketches. They're not fully detailed, they're quick, but they are capturing a real essence of form and volume that's really hard to capture in such a simple image. They're great examples, Charlie.
Absolutely.
There should be lots of thumbnails generated in any session that you do, and so the key is to kind of have this fast and furious nature. So what I often do with my students is I say, okay, let's try and do 2 minutes, get 20 ideas. Now, most people at the beginning do 2, we do several rounds of this, and we find to make it a fun competition because the important thing is to defer your judgment. Not saying, oh, this is a rubbish idea, this is a great idea. Any idea is a good idea at this stage. In these sorts of other examples, we can see that the student has highlighted some elements, so brought some colour behind some of these elements to really, perhaps these are the favourite ones.
Yep, it really helps us to see maybe where the student is, having done lots of the sketches, feels that these are perhaps directions that are a good idea to pursue.
What I'm really liking in these sketches here is the fact that students thinking about the form and volume of the object. So not just the same viewpoint over and over and over as in the earlier one, but actually thinking about how the teapot or the kettle might pour, where it might have a stand, and how does it look from different sides and different perspectives. I mean, everything in this case is a 3D object. We're trying to work with products that you look at from every direction. That's a real trap that students often fall into, is they just draw the same viewpoint over and over and over, forgetting that there's a back and a side and a top view. And generally when we interact with a product, we see it from all these perspectives.
And so this student is really, when we're talking about doing lots of sketches, in some instances, lots of the sketches are actually for the same idea, but they're showing different viewpoints or maybe different ways in which it would be used.
What's really nice in these ones, Charlie, is this idea of having, stackable elements and then looking at here the different proportions of each of those elements.
You can really see how the student has started with this one idea of stacking, but then explored all sorts of different versions, whether it be stacking cups or stacking underneath the teapot. Here we can see stacking everything up in a tower again. So this is such a nice example of the idea of using these thumbnail sketches to explore all the possible options in a certain design idea, here stacking.
I think the other important thing to talk about here is the difference between an idea and a product concept. So an idea is really just bang, that's a small aspect of what the idea might be. A product concept would have a lot more detail, wouldn't it, Charles?
Yeah, a lot more detail and usually a more refined sketch, and often it just reflects that the idea has been thought through a bit further, so further developed.
Often, as we've seen, our design research can start with words. In your opportunity matrix, it may be words and images. In your brainstorming and mind maps, it might be words and images. It's a really important creative leap to go from those words to visual products. Even taking your mood board and your visual inspiration, you still need to convert that inspiration into a product. So that's really quite a difficult thing to do. What's important is a word can be interpreted in many different ways. If we take the example of something comfortable, wow, comfortable could mean lots of things to lots of different people. So by trying to make a visual that represents that word, it's a real design challenge, but it also is the way that product users will pick up on these kind of non-visual or difficult cues in the product and see them in a particular way. Often the blank white page is really daunting for students and professional designers as well.
Yeah.
So having a word and then moving from a point of inspiration or a central point in your design process can really be advantageous.
So here in these examples, you can see that the student has started by saying electric kettle with tea infuser. That's then the basis for all of the designs that they're exploring throughout this page. So a great example of how some simple verbal cues can just get you started with imagining and sketching out how the product might look and how it can eventually exist. So to summarise, the define phase is all about generating ideas. What's really important when you're generating ideas is to not dwell too long on each idea. You want to generate as many ideas as possible in a short amount of time as possible.
Yeah, the speed thing is the important thing, so you don't kind of fixate on one particular idea and you get a creative flow. And that creative flow is where you kind of immersed yourself in that design problem, you've got all the constraints in your head and you're actually trying to put them down on paper. So that process of getting it out of your head onto the paper is in itself a process of analysis.
Absolutely. So it means you can take all of that information from the discover phase and starting to define through sketches what some viable or promising outcomes could be, and to take further in the next phase, which is the develop phase.
It's kind of an opportunity browsing.
Absolutely.